Okay, Bez Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Zevachim Daf Lamed Tes, and it's a small daf today. So we will begin from Daf Lamed Ches Amid Beis, 38b, and we are discussing. Remember, we were discussing yesterday regarding the Beis Hamikdash and the three. There's when you have a carbon chatas, the kohen goes up on the ramp here and puts the blood on the four corners of the mizbeach. So the Mishnah said that just by putting the blood on one corner, boom, you achieve the kapara, and the rest of them is you get an extra mitzvah for putting the blood on the rest of the three. Okay, that was the topic of yesterday's, but the Gemara is going to say that the rest of the blood that you put on the other three corners have some value to it. I mean, it's not like it's holy blood. So let's see. Amar Rapapa. Rapapa said, this is where we stop. Yesh mehem kitchilasoi v'yesh mehem kisoifoi. These three extra bloods have some halachas, like the first blood. That means they're really, really holy blood. And some of them are like soifai. Soifai means like the blood that you pour down the drain. You see the picture over here? He's pouring the blood down the drain on the side of his back. In other words, it's not so holy. So some halachas make these three bloods holy, and some of them make him not as holy. So what does it mean? Halacha is chutz. Chutz means you're not allowed to take it out of the Beis Hamikdash, right? The blood that was supposed to be poured onto the other three corners. V'laila, you're not allowed to leave it overnight. In other words, if the night passed, you can't put it on the mizbeach. Zorus, that's obvious. You can't have a non-kohen do the other three sprinklings. Uklisharis, you still have to have it from a holy vessel. Keren, you got to put it on the corner. The etzba, you got to use your finger. In other words, you don't splash it onto the corner like the first one. You stick your finger into the cup, and then you put it onto the corner. Albeit the first one you get kapara, the other two lemitzvah. Kibutz is what we're going to be discussing today. Kibutz means that if some of the blood splashes onto the kohen's clothing, the Torah says you can't send the clothing out to the dry cleaners, but you have to right away wash the clothing in the azara. Only if the blood of the chatas, of the stuff that was supposed to be going onto the corner of the mizbeach, if that fell on the clothing of the kohen gadol, of the kohen, he has to wash the clothing in the azara, in the Beis Hamikdash. V'chishirayim kitchilasim. That what's left over, you have to pour down the drain. So after you do the four sprinklings, whatever left over, you pour down the yesod. Misa, okay, and kitchilasa. Misa, loy sharye, v'loy meflagle, v'loy mi'alye legave, kisoifon. So there, if you're not chayev, again, if the owner died, so then you could still bring it. Loy sharya v'loy mefalga v'loy aliyah legave. It's not the one that brings the kapara, and it's not those three will not destroy the validity of the carbon if you had a bad thought, a piggle thought. V'loy aliyah legave, if you can bring it inside. Kisayfen, like the blood that you put on the shirayim. Okay, that was the thing. So it's these things, the extra three that you put on the mizbeach have some kedusha to it. And the main point that we're going to just discuss today is kibus, that you wash it. Amar Papa asked the question, how do I know that the blood prior to you putting it onto the corner, if it spills onto your clothing, then the kohen has to wash it inside the Beis Hamikdash. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah, nitas min hatzavar ala beged. If the blood squirted out of the animal, okay, from the neck of the animal after you slaughtered it, al habeged onto the clothing of the kohen, ein toin kibus, you don't have to wash that clothing. Min hakeren u min hayesoid ein toin kibus. If it, let's say you put it onto the corner, okay, and then it somehow slipped off the corner and dropped onto the clothing of the kohen, that also does not need kibus, does not need washing. Okay. Ha, so we can infer from the Mishnah, min haroy Karen, if it's the type of blood that you could put onto the corner, even if it's not the main blood, but it's the blood of the other three, ta'on kibus, you'll have to wash the baguette. So we see from here that the three bloods also need a washing if they fell off, if prior to you putting it onto those three, if it fell on your clothing, you'll have to wash your clothing in the Beis Hamikdash. So that's what Rav Papa says, that's my proof. Says the Gemara, something's wrong here. V'letamech, according to your proof, how do you read the rest of the Mishnah? It says min hayesoid, if it fell off the yesoid. If it fell off, let's say the guy, it rolled off, you see in the picture, if it rolled off onto the clothing of the kohen, okay? You would say that it doesn't need kibus, right? Then you can send it out to the dry cleaners. Homina royally say, but if it's blood that you could almost put onto the foundation, ton kibus, you need to wash. That means that even after you even after you did this rika and you put it onto the four corners, this brisa holds that as long as you did not put it onto the yisoid yet, it would still need a washing. Wait a second. Chachamim don't agree with that. Asher Yazik, the Torah says, the blood that you sprinkle on the Mizbeach, that's the blood that needs kibus. If that ends up on your clothing, you need kibus in the Beis Hamikdash. Prat lezeh shekvar huza. But if it was ready blood that was already sprinkled, and this is just remainder, Chachamim hold that if it falls on the clothing, you would not need kibus. So Hamani, who is the author of this Mishnah? Rabbi Nechemia. It must be Rabbi Nechemia. That's now we learned in our Mishnah. Rabbi Nechemia says, Shiore Adam Shekrivim B'chutz Chayev. This extra blood that you think is extra, if you took this blood, what the kohen's holding, and he brought it outside and poured it outside the Beis Hamikdash on another mizbeach, so you get chayev misa, right? Because that's Rabbi Nechemia's opinion. It's not just an extra blood; it's blood that you're supposed to do a service with, which means pour it down by the drain, which is on the mizbeach. So it's Rabbi Nechemia who holds that as long as the blood is not, you didn't complete the service, it's still considered blood. And so, yes, I would agree with you that this Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Nechemia. However, Chachamim maybe disagree with Rabbi Nechemia. Maybe Chachamim hold that once I do the first sprinkling onto the mizbeach at one corner, the rest of the blood in your vessel is not really blood to be concerned about. And if it ends up on the kohen's clothing, you don't need kibus. So the Gemara first asks back, wait a second, you're saying that Reb Nechemia would hold that you would need kibus? You're just extending it. Rabbi Nechemia just said that the shiyore hadam, if you brought it outside the Beis Hamikdash, then you chayev, right? But that's only telling you that you're not supposed to bring stuff that's supposed to be on the Mizbeach outside the Beis Hamikdash, because everything is like that, like the limbs of the animal, the fats of the animal, also are not blood, but you're not allowed to bring it outside the Beis Hamikdash. But kibus, mishametle, maybe by washing the clothing, Rabbi Nechemia will hold that's not blood. Once you did put it onto the corners, Rabbi Nechemia holds that if you did your mitzvah, so then if it falls on your clothing, that's not something that needs kibbutz. Where do you see that Rabbi Nechemia will hold that the blood, after you did the sprinkling on the four corners, If it falls on you, you still need kibbutz. So the Gemara says, and I do see it from somewhere, from another brisa. We go to Amid Aleph. But Tanya, we learned in a brisa, domim ad tu'unin yisoid, a domim that you're supposed to still need to put it by the yisoid, by the foundation. In other words, you did your sprinkling and you're ready to pour by the foundation. If that blood falls on you, tu'unin kibbutz, it needs to be washed. So that must be Rabbi Nechemia. Umachshava me'alas behem. And if you have a bad thought, you could passel the carbon. Even after you did the sprinkling on the four corners, it's still an important work of pouring the blood by the drain. That if you bring it outside, chayev, then you're chayev. That's the first part of the brisa. Then the brisa says, so the damim hanishpachin la'ama. Let's say it's blood that you're supposed to not even put it on the mizbeach. You passed. Let's say you shechted the carbon and found out it had a balmum. So then you're not supposed to sprinkle the blood. You're supposed to spill it onto the flowing river in the Beis Hamikdash. There's like a flowing stream in the Beis Hamikdash that will, get rid of it. That blood, ein tunin kibbutz. There's no problem. You don't need to wash your beged. You don't need kibbutz. The ein machshava me'alas behem v'amal behem b'chutz potter. That blood has no kedusha to it whatsoever. If the carbon was pasul, you could just throw out the blood and that's it. So, but the first part of the brisa says, "Man shamat le da'ama malahem b'chutz chayiv." Who holds that damim that needs the yisoid? If you bring it outside the Beis Hamikdash, yechayiv. It's from Nechemihi. The comma and the brisa said to unin kibbutz. It needs kibbutz. So therefore, Rabbi Nechemiah does hold its kibbutz. So where we're holding, the Gemara is just backing away for a papa's proof that the three bloods need kibbutz. The Gemara says Rav Papa proved it from a Mishnah. That Mishnah goes according to a rogue opinion called Rav Nechemiah. But how do you know that the Chachamim would agree to that? Now the Gemara asks, wait a second, you're telling me that this brisa goes according to Rav Nechemiah, and we see Rav Nechemiah holds Dom Hatunin Yesod need kibbutz umachshava ma'alas bem. Then how can you destroy it with thinking a bad thought? Well, Tanya, we learned in the brisa yotzu shirayim baktaris emerim she'ein ma'akvenes akabarim she'ein machshavas ma'alas behem. You can't make a carbon piggle by the blood that you're supposed to pour on the yesod, because once you were makayim the mitzvah, right, and you had your kapara, then you can't destroy it with a bad thought. So how could this brisa say that blood that you're ready to put on the foundation into that drain, a bad thought could passel the carbon? That's not Rab Nechemiah's opinion. That's nobody's opinion. So the Gemara now backs away and says, you're right. Ki Tanyahi, the brisa is talking about b'shalosh matanis shebechatas. That the brisa is going on b'shalosh matanis shebechatas. It's not damen ha'tu'unin yesod that need the yesod. It's damen that will eventually get to the yesod, but that's the last three of a carbon chatas. And that's exactly what we're saying. The last three of a carbon chatas, tu'unin kibbutz. I guess right over here you have a riot to. This could be what Rapapa is saying. As long as you didn't put it onto the corners, so then it will need kibbutz. Says the Gemara, ihachi tu'unin yisoid lakarenosli. Why does the brisa say it's going to the foundation? It's supposed to be going to the corners. Ema. So you say nitanin yisoid. That's eventually going to get to the yisoid. So okay. So if you're telling me that this brisa is talking about the three, I'm going to put a 3 over here, and it's telling me those 3 need a kibbutz, then how could you say machshava me'alas behem? These are extra sprinklings, and you told me umachshava me'alas behem amrit loy sharia v'loy mefagel v'loy ali l'gavei kesofim, that you can't destroy the carbon with a bad thought by these 3. These 3 were extra, and they're just to get an extra mitzvah. So you can't make a carbon puzzle if you're doing something extra, and we said that clearly in your statement. Ella, so the Gemara backs away. Ki tanya nahi, this brisa is not talking about the 3, but ki tanya hi bedamim hapnimin, that it's talking about bloods that was supposed to be put inside there are certain chatas that you're supposed to sprinkle inside the sanctuary. Beyond the sanctuary, you're supposed to bring it into the sanctuary and sprinkle it on the inside mizbeach and by the paroiches. Those everything is ma'akev. Those bloods need kibus. Ihachi. So the Gemara says like this. Aval, but what would the brisa hold? B'damim hachitzonim my potter. By blood that's on the chitzonim, this brisa will hold that the blood, the extra three bloods of the chatas, and would be exempt from kibus. If that's what the brisa holds, not like Rapapa, adetani damim shtacham la'ama liflik v'list. Then why does the brisa say the differentiation is between this blood and blood that you're not going to sprinkle on any mizbeach, pasula blood? It should make another differentiation, a simpler differentiation. But when do we say that it needs kibus b'damim haprimim? Aval b'damim chitzainim, but the three bloods from the chitzainim, from the carbon chatas, pata would be exempt from kibus. So again, even if you want to say that this brisa is against Rav Papa, it doesn't make too much sense either, because then the brisa doesn't have to jump to say, oh, b'damim hanishpachal la'ama, bloods that's supposed to be thrown out of the base of Migdash via the stream, ain't tuning kibus. You could say bloods that are supposed to be sprinkled on the outside mizbeach, the three bloods, also don't need kibus, are also not very different bloods. So how would you make sense? How would you make the brisa make sense that way? Answers the Gemara, no. I could say like this: Hamani Rab Nechemi. You could say the brisa goes according to Rab Nechemia. The Amar Shiyare Hadam Shekrivu Mechutz Chayev. That the Shiyare Hadam, that if you bring it out to the chutz chayev, that even if after you put it on the corners, as long as you didn't pour it by the foundation, if you bring it outside the base of English, you would be chayev. So then it wouldn't make sense to put the three p'turas next to the three chiyuve, because it's not all. You see, the brisa says chatas pnimium need kibus, machshava me'elis behem, and mal behem b'chutz chayev, and the daman hashpachim behem doesn't need any of those three. But if it would just go and not take such an extreme jump, but it would just say, oh, damim that need the aside of the base of chatas chitzonius, then you wouldn't be able to say hamal behem b'chutz potter, because Reb Nechemia holds hamal behem chutz is chayev. Therefore, it jumped to v'nishdabim hanashpachim la'ama. So let's stop and let's think. Just the bottom line over here is that Reb Nechemia, Rab Papa said that those extra three bloods are not like the regular bloods of the first time you do it, and therefore, if it falls on the kohen's clothing, he needs kibuz. He thought he could bring a raya from the Mishnah, and the Gemara slugged it up. Ravina says you could bring a raya from the Mishnah. Mina kerem mamish, mina yisoid, min haroil yisoid. Papa says this Mishnah is a good raya to Rav Papa. If it falls on the beged, if from the keren, ain't it? If it was touching the keren, you don't need kibus. But if it did not reach the keren, even if it's the three bloods, it would need kibus. It's a good raya. Your question: what does min hayisoid mean? Min hayisoid means that it's something that is supposed to go to the aside, but did not go to the aside. That's what it means. So let's read it inside. Ravina Ama min hakerem mamish, min hasoid min haroil aside, something that is destined to go to the aside. Then you can, if it falls off the aside, yes, but anything that is eventually going to go to the aside, that needs kibus, whether it's chatas pnimi or chatas k'tzayni. How could you say Karen means mamish and min hayisoid means min haroil yisoid? Hi mai, it makes perfect sense. Hashta roy lekeren at Arnold Loy. If you're going to say ro'ui lekeren, it doesn't passel you. That means the three roy yisoid b'baya, Element of Makarim, Mamish, Lusai. Period. That ends this piece of the Gemara. And basically, Ravina said it is a good raya to Rav Papa. Let's go back into the Gemara. And this is a brisa that's going to be discussion for tomorrow's daf, but we'll just in the next 3 minutes we're going to go through this brisa. Kol hanitan al mizbeach hapinimi. Anything that any blood that's supposed to be put on the inside mizbeach. Here, look, there's a kohen putting blood on the mizbeach hapinimi. If he leaves out one blood, there's no kapara. Everything is important. How do you know that? Tana Rabbanim, ba'asa kasha asa, ma bal al-aimid, lichpoy b'hazasa. Torah repeats, so to speak, that you're supposed to sprinkle on the paroiches, on the curtain, towards the curtain, and you're supposed to sprinkle on the mizbeach. That's it. It doubled it. The lima, it teaches you, shibchisa achas mikol hamatanos li'asav le'klim. If you missed one, that's it. You didn't get a kapara. You see the difference? Achates chitzoina. Although you need 4 touchings of the corner, we learned that if you do one, that's okay. The rest is a mitzvah. You get an extra mitzvah. But one, you already get the kapara. When it comes to a chatas pnimi, a chatas that you're supposed to sprinkle inside the sanctuary, then every sprinkling matters. And if you missed one, then you didn't do anything. I could understand that sometimes you have to sprinkle 7 times, like on Yom Kippur. That is a holdup. But how do you know the 4 sprinklings that you do on the corners of the Mizbeach? You see this coin over here on the left is doing 4 sprinklings on each corner. How do you know each corner is important? You see, there's 7 that you do. I can hear there's 7 that you do. There's a pasuk that says that each one is important. But how do you know the 4 over here that you're going to do on the Mizbeach HaPnimi is also very important? Talmud Loy Meken Yaseh Lapar Zepar Yom Kippurim. We go to Amid Beis. Kasha Asa Lapar Zepar Kol Mashiach. Hachatos Eli Seire Avodah Zarah. So we learn from the extra words in the pasuk that everything is ma'akiv that you're putting onto the Mizbeach. Plus, you learn that remember the goats of Avodah Zarah, where the Torah tells you that Bezdin convinced everybody to do Avodah Zarah, and they made a mistake, that they also need a service that you're supposed to sprinkle on the paroiches and the gold Mizbeach, and burn it outside the 3 machnes, because it's not really clear in the pasuk that Sirei Avodah Zarah has the same din like a par Kohen Mashiach and a par Helam Dova Shatzibar. Now, Yochol, the Brisa says, Sha'ani marba af se'iri regolim sir Rosh Chodashim. I would think that a se'ir, the goat that was born on Rosh Chodesh, and the goats that you brought on every Yom Tiv, that also has to be brought inside the sanctuary, and then you burn it completely away from the Beis Hamikdash. Talmud loy, only these karbonas. Remember, the par Helam Dova Shatzibar, par Kol Mashiach, and the Sirei Avodah Zarah, but not the Rosh Chodesh goat or the regal goat. Says the Gemara, Mara Isul Rabbas Elu Haitzis Elu. Why do you include these, the Sirei Avodah Zarah, and exclude the Sirei Regal and the Sirei Rosh Chodesh? So the Gemara says, Acha Sheribi Hakosav Miyat. We have an exclusion, an inclusion, and an exclusion. So Marbanias Elish Mechaper Malvei Mitzvah Yadua. I'm going to include Sirei Avodah Zarah because I know what it's being mechaper. It's being mechaper on Avodah Zarah. But Sirei Regal and Sirei Rosh Chodesh are mechaper on an Aveira that you don't even know you did. Because what is it coming to be mechaper? The Seir Chatas that you brought on Yom Tiv and Rosh Chodesh is Tumas Migdash Ukudashev, even Tam of the base of Migdash, and you never knew in the beginning, you never knew you did this Aveira. Somehow this carbon brought a kapara. So that's not it's not being mechaper on a mitzvah yadua, so maybe that's excluded. That type of carbon is not brought inside the sanctuary, the blood, and it's not burned. Only a seer avodah zarah is brought inside the sanctuary and burned. Concludes the Gemara. The chipar, another few things, the chipar, afal pish loy samach. You get the kapara even if the zakanim did not put their hands on the animal and perform smicha. The nislach afal pishlei nasan l'shurayim. Even if they didn't put the extra, the leftovers down the aside, it doesn't pass. Oma rose, and the Gemara's last question is: Mara isa lifso ba'azoyis lahachsha b'smicha b'shurayim. How could you passel that if you didn't do all the sprinklings, you didn't get the kapara? And if you forgot to do the smicha and the shirayim, you do still get the kapara. What made you say that? Amrit, we can say, Poisel b'hazois, I'm going to pasel hazor shem akves b'chol mokom. Because everywhere else, if you don't do the sprinkling, let's say on Yom Kippur, you don't get the kapara. So also by the par helam davar shetzibar and the sira shchada and the seire in the par kay Mashiach and the sirei vaydazar, I'm going to say that if you don't do the amount of sprinklings correctly, you didn't get the kapara. But if I'm going to be machsher, and the carbon is kosher, even if the zakanim forgot to do the smicha and they forgot to put the blood on the extra blood down the drain by the side of the mizbeach, they will still get a kapara. Okay, we will stop over here.
Well,
Yes.
thank you. Have a great Shabbos.
Great Shabbos, everybody.
Where did you leave off?
At the end of the page, the last of the Lamed Testament Bays, mamish at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.